In this episode of the PBD Podcast, the host interviews Ana Kasparian, a political commentator, media host, and journalist. Kasparian is the main host and producer of the online TV show Young Turks and has been working in the media industry since 2007. She discusses her background as the daughter of Armenian immigrants and her journey into journalism. The conversation begins with a discussion about the declining trust in media among Americans. Kasparian explains that the polarization in the country is reflected in how the media conducts itself. She believes that depending on the news source, people may only get half of the story, leading to a lack of trust. She also mentions the mistakes made by legacy media outlets, such as the misreporting on the Mueller report, which eroded trust further. Kasparian emphasizes the importance of having a diverse media diet to get a better understanding of the news. The conversation then shifts to a clip from billionaire investor Chamath Palihapitiya, who shares his assessment of Donald Trump's presidency. Chamath, who did not vote for Trump, acknowledges that Trump did a good job in certain areas, particularly in avoiding unnecessary wars and being willing to negotiate with other countries. Kasparian agrees with some of Trump's policies but expresses concern about his disregard for liberal democracy and his potential to undermine democratic institutions. The discussion moves on to Kasparian's own political views. She clarifies that she is not a fan of Trump or Biden and did not vote for Biden in the 2020 election. She explains that she has concerns about both candidates but acknowledges that Biden has done some positive things, such as implementing a minimum 15% corporate tax rate to address corporate tax loopholes. However, she believes that Biden has not done enough to help working Americans. The conversation then takes a personal turn as the host brings up a recent controversy involving Kasparian. She had criticized the term, birthing person, as degrading to women and faced backlash from some progressives. Kasparian stands firm in her criticism and refuses to apologize, stating that she will never apologize for wanting to be referred to as a woman. She explains that the term, birthing person, was meant to be inclusive of trans men and non-binary people, but she believes it erases the experiences of biological women. The host suggests that Kasparian is experiencing a similar backlash to what Trump faced, as she is being attacked for not conforming to a specific ideology. Kasparian acknowledges that she is evolving and growing in her political views and does not want to be cornered into agreeing with everything that is taking place. She emphasizes the importance of being able to have nuanced discussions and not being afraid to challenge prevailing narratives. The discussion then delves into the broader issue of identity politics and the transgender community. Kasparian expresses her frustration with the current state of the conversation, where people are often bullied or pressured into conforming to certain beliefs. She believes that this approach is counterproductive and that people should be allowed to hold their own beliefs without facing discrimination. However, she also acknowledges the importance of respecting transgender individuals' preferences and using their preferred pronouns. The conversation then turns to the topic of transitioning for minors. Kasparian acknowledges the complexity of the issue and believes that there should be protocols in place to ensure that only those who are genuinely transgender undergo medical interventions. She mentions the Tavistock Clinic in the UK, which was shut down due to concerns about the lack of proper protocols for transitioning minors. She believes that decisions about transitioning should involve parents, doctors, and the individuals themselves, but also emphasizes the need for safeguards to prevent harm. The podcast then moves on to discuss the distractions caused by debates over identity politics. The host, Patrick Bet-David, questions why there is so much focus on these issues when there are more pressing matters at hand, such as the national debt, inflation, and potential conflicts. Kasparian agrees with the sentiment and acknowledges that these distractions can prevent progress on more significant issues. She also mentions the influence of lobbying and the distrust it creates in institutions. The conversation continues with a discussion about California and its current state under Governor Gavin Newsom. Kasparian describes California as a mess and criticizes the Democratic Party for propping up proven failures. She mentions the decriminalization of certain activities without proper regulation, such as prostitution and drug use, which has led to negative consequences. She also criticizes the misarrangement of funds allocated to combat homelessness, with money going to ineffective nonprofits instead of addressing the root causes of the issue. The conversation then shifts to the mass shooting in Maine, where 22 people were killed and 30 injured. The shooter, Robert Card, is described as an Army Reserve member and firearms instructor who had reported recent mental health issues, including threats to shoot up the National Guard base. Kasparian highlights the failure of the FBI and mental health system to prevent such incidents and calls for better funding and support for mental health services. The podcast also touches on the increasing polarization and division in the country, with Kasparian emphasizing the need for civility and understanding between political opponents. She acknowledges the frustration and anger felt by many Americans but cautions against resorting to violence as a solution. Instead, she advocates for strategic efforts to bring about change through elections and policy advocacy. The conversation concludes with a discussion of the growing support for political violence in the United States. A recent poll by the Public Religion Research Institute, PRRI, found that 23% of respondents believe that patriots may have to resort to violence to save the country, marking the first time support for political violence has exceeded 20%. The poll shows an increase in support for violence across political affiliations, with Republicans at 33%, Democrats at 13%, and Independents at 22%. Kasparian expresses concern over the rise in support for political violence and emphasizes the importance of seeing each other as fellow Americans, even when there are disagreements. She acknowledges the frustrations and grievances felt by many but argues that resorting to violence only further divides the country and undermines the democratic process. Instead, she calls for cooler heads and strategic efforts to bring about change through peaceful means. The conversation continues with Bet David questioning the cause of the divide between Israel and Palestine. He wonders if there is a group behind closed doors instigating the conflict and benefiting from the chaos. Kasparian responds by stating that no one wants to see innocent civilians killed, but she believes that Israel's current approach of bombing the Gaza Strip is not the right way to go. She argues that it is causing more harm than good and breeding more extremism. Bet David counters by emphasizing the need for Israel to protect itself from terrorist groups like Hamas. He argues that Israel has the right to defend itself and that the IDF does not want to kill innocent civilians. He also points out that Hamas has a founding doctrine of annihilating all Jews in Israel, making it difficult to find a peaceful solution. The conversation becomes heated as Kasparian criticizes Israel's actions, accusing them of ethnically cleansing Palestinians and committing war crimes. She argues that bombing residential areas and hospitals is not the right approach and only leads to more extremism. She suggests that Israel should use special operations to target Hamas instead. Bet David challenges Kasparian's views, pointing out that Hamas uses civilians as human shields and fires rockets from civilian areas. He argues that Israel has a responsibility to protect its citizens and cannot simply ignore the threat posed by Hamas. He also highlights the fact that Arab countries surrounding Israel have not taken in any Israeli refugees, while Israel has taken in hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees. The conversation concludes with both Bet David and Kasparian expressing their perspectives on the conflict. Bet David emphasizes the need for a strong leader who can impose fear on all parties involved and prevent further conflicts. Kasparian maintains her stance that Israel's current approach is wrong and that a peaceful two-state solution is the desired outcome. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.